Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research and the Professor of Cultural Studies at Flinders University. And yes, I've just started in this new role. But as my first public presentation in this role, I wanted to summon the inspiration, the aspiration and the example of a great scholar and a great man, the late Dr. Christopher Newell. Christopher was a disability activist and an outstanding researcher, and I wanted to use his example today to talk with you about impairment, disability and doctoral education. Right now in Australia, 1 in 5 Australians have an impairment, have a disability, and yet in our doctoral programs the level is so much lower than that. And in fact we don't even have accurate data on the number of men and women with impairments in our doctoral programs. But I am the Dean of Graduate Research and I can accept those statistics or the lack of statistics as just the way of life, the way of reality, how our universities operate, or I can ask you to join with me so that we can make a difference and we can create a transformative space for men and women with impairments in doctoral education. I hope you'll join me. Christopher Newell really captured the scale of the injustice and the fear that is felt by men and women with impairments, even approaching a university to discuss with a supervisor possible enrolment. He stated, quote, "When I commenced my doctorate, I knew my disability was a negative factor. I still remember the tentative phone call to my potential supervisor and the fact that despite the increasingly positive tone in the conversation, at some stage I would have to reveal to him the deep, dark factor. Oh, by the way, I have a disability and that really affects the way in which I study." End of quote. I want to make it clear to you, as the Dean of Graduate Research, that I welcome your contact, I welcome your conversation, I want to hear your story, and I want to hear how I can help you become your best self. You are an expert in your own life. You need to tell me about that expertise, and what then I need to do is enact universal design in our online and offline architecture, but also ensure that if retrofitting is required via regulations, via our day-to-day behaviour and practice, that we are able to create bespoke options for you to enable your research and your study. You see, all education, all learning really, is based on effective relationships, and my goal is to create a matrix of relationships around you to enable excellence and success. I have a theory that the widening participation agenda in our universities was very focused on undergraduate degrees, and that was great, very important, so that guys and gals with impairments could finish a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts and maybe even a Bachelor of Engineering. But in some ways the aspirations of men and women with impairments are being capped. The dreams, the hopes of doctoral education are not being enabled. It's almost as if, oh right, well we've enabled our undergraduate degrees, our business here is concluded. I wanted to let you know, as the Dean of Graduate Research, that my job is to ensure the widening participation agenda exists in our doctoral programs as well. At Flinders, and as your Dean, my job is to help you get to your dream, get to your aspiration and become your best self. I also don't want you stressed, worried or emotional about talking to me about impairment and disability. I want to hear from you. I welcome those conversations. My time is your time. You come and see me. And the reason for that is my interest in impairment and disability is not simply political or professional, it is also personal. I was born with an impairment that in the 1970s, bless man, was called clumsy child syndrome. We rarely use that phrase much anymore. It's often called developmental dyspraxia. And I was lucky because I was born in a wonderful city called Perth in Western Australia. And I was lucky because in this wonderful city, an outstanding researcher was producing work on developmental dyspraxia, on clumsy child syndrome at that place at that time. And his name was Dr. Sunny Gabbay. He just happened to be in Perth. And it's funny as a mature researcher, because now when I read his refereed scholarship, and he talks about, the small children and the little girls that he was working with, I was one of those little girls. So it was just a luck of fate that I happened to be in the right place at the right time when this particular condition was being researched. And I was one of the first generations that gained from occupational therapy to enable guys and gals to reach their best selves. So I am incredibly lucky. But I suppose because of that intervention, I've been able to move through life with a fair amount of success. But like most of us with impairments, I've had to handle some pretty difficult years in childhood and adolescence where groups of young women would just love sort of following me round the schoolyard at lunchtime, chanting my name and abuse about disability. We all have to put up with that. Or young boys who for some reason just really loved tripping me over to see what would happen when my face would hit bitumen. And even in adult life, it is amazing, even in universities with brilliant, interesting people, how often the different, how often the distinctive is abused and ridiculed and labelled rather than validated and applauded and acknowledged. So what I do say to you is, you are going to be supported through this journey. Personally, I've had to put up with the labels, the ridicule and the abuse. And what I can say to you is that nobody on my watch will have to put up with this. My office will look after you. I will look after you. And these days, I can move through life with a fair amount of ease. But if you ever want to see any problems, try and put me on a stairwell when I haven't actually got any railing, or watch me get on and off an escalator. That's always fun. Or throw me into a pool. And then fun and games really do commence. But I never want you to experience that fear or that worry that Christopher Newell talked about. I want you to talk about your impairment with me in any way that makes you feel comfortable, and we'll create a package of care and a package of support to ensure you engage in excellent research. But this is not only a personal or a professional commitment from me, it's also a research interest. 1 year ago, almost to the day, isn't that amazing, I published this book with Flinders called Enabling University. And what this book tried to do is talk about proactive and concrete strategies in both the online and offline environment to ensure that men and women with impairments move through our universities. But I was very clear, even in that book, that it was a real concern, an invisibility, a silence, that men and women with impairments were not being welcomed into our doctoral programs. So if you have ever considered enrolling in a PhD, but you thought the barriers would be too great and you thought you wouldn't get the support that you would need, I want you to know that I am ready to have that conversation with you. If I can help in any way at all, you've got my support. None of us should have to live our lives within the limitations and the discriminations of other people. I refuse to live within the label of others, and I'd ask that you do the same. My job is to help you become your best self. So whatever platform, whatever media platform you would like to have that conversation with me, I would love to hear from you. So please feel free to send me an email at tara.brabazon@flinders.edu.au, or contact me via Skype, tara.brabazon, or even via Twitter @tarabrabazon. I'd also love to see you in person. I'm in my office just after 8 o'clock every day, so my door is always open. If you'd like to walk through that door, if you'd like to roll through that door, I am available to see you. Final comment I'd like to make, I'd like to do a big shout out to my friends on Twitter @PHDisabled, PH Disabled, a wonderful group of men and women who present so much of the innovative research and the important voices of men and women enrolled in doctoral programs with impairment, with disability. I recommend at PH Disabled to you, and I want to thank them for their support of my work, and I wish you every success. Be fabulous, be splendid, and remember, don't live in the labels that other people put on you. Be your best self.